Hello and welcome to this video which features setups where black combines c6 and d5. So okay, g3, d5, knight f3, c6 and d5 with g6. You can do it right here. This is the first line that we're going to check, or he can start with knight f6 and only after bishop g2 play the move g6. In fact, those lines are quite different in some way, because if we go to this first instance, black has not yet played the move knight f6, and this is a difference that we will see right away. If we play bishop g2, which is my suggestion, and black goes bishop g7, black in fact does control the e5 square, which is not the case with the knight on f6. So black is intending to play e5. If white now plays a lame move like castles, black gets e5 in and enjoys a full center. And this is not my cup of tea. I don't want to give black such a big center early on. So what should white do? Yeah, I was searching a bit there what to do, and there are a couple of possible tries. My main recommendation against the g6 setup with the knight on f6 is based on b3, but this is impossible to get in now with this open diagonal. At the end, I came up with the move to a4. This is quite frequently played on the GM level nowadays, and gives white pretty decent chances for a slight advantage. Not much, but a little bit. Yeah, what does black do against this? Couple of options. d4 is the most ambitious move, but here after d3 and b4, I think white is a little bit better on the queen side. We've got more space and easy plans there. This is a game Papp with white against Delchev, and Papp went on to win this game. We should note that the fianchetto, knight on e7 and pawn on c6 are not ideal in a Benoni. Black is very much away from any e4 central break. d4 is ambitious but a bit risky. Far more conservative move is the capture on c4. White takes, and now e5. Here white has a slight edge with normal moves. We have a well-known structure. C and d pawn are traded, just like in the English with c4, e5. But here c6 doesn't really add up. Yeah? Often black would like knight c6 to d4, and also the fianchetto. I mean, you can argue about that. I think it's okay, but often black will go knight e7, and this is again not well placed. It's not a big deal for black, but white is a little bit better for sure. So what do they play against knight f4? Most of the time, the strong players, they go for knight d7. The idea is simple. This pin is broken. There was a pin going on d5. For example, if black did not react at all with this, we get a favorable pawn structure with the capture on d5. Yeah, c against d pawn traded, no direct counterplay. White is a little bit better, as we have seen in so many cases of this video series. So knight d7 is the idea, to block this diagonal. White takes, and now black can recapture or play knight b6. After the recapture, white is going to play simple moves like this, and now d4. Yeah, we are following a game between Kramnik and Carlsen. This was played in Berlin 2015 in the Blitz or Rapid event. I'm not quite sure from the file. In any way, Kramnik was a little bit better here against the current world champion. He has this ideas here to invade on c7. It's just a little bit better for white. The knight on c3 is better than the knight on d7. If we go back there, black can also go knight b6. This is in fact somewhat comparable. Queen b3, pawn takes, and now white puts a pawn on d4 and develops in a similar way. We are following a game between Luc Van Vele and Alexander Dranov. That is probably the second German league, 2015. Knight e4, bishop f4, takes, and Van Vele had a comfortable slight advantage in this position. One issue is the absolutely not great knight on b6. This position would be probably no problem at all with the knight on c6, but it is on b6 and white is better on the c file. The move queen a4, if we jump back again, is probably sufficient for slight advantage, or at least an interesting game without much theory to be learned. In fact, if we look at the second position where black can play g6, white can also play queen a4 here. This is not a substantial difference. So if you like those positions that I just had shown, queen a4 can be an alternative for you here as well. What I'm suggesting, however, is the move b3. Why not queen a4? Well, b3 I think is also very decent for white. I think white has chances for a slight edge, and it helps to know this variation, because there could be some weird move orders that lead you into this. Also, if you intend to expand your repertoire at a later stage, this also might happen, that you get into this type of double fianchetto, and it's interesting to play. Here black usually plays castles. There is actually a pretty tricky move here, queen to b6. It looks a bit innocent at first, but if you look a little bit more closely, you see that the queen is looking at this and looking at the bishop. So there is d takes c4 as an idea, and possible attacks on this pawn, which also take a look at the bishop. This looks funny. I'm going to scratch those arrows. So there is some tactical, there are some tactical ideas in this position. The best move is queen c2. You had to cover this bishop, and after bishop f5, play d3. This is interesting. After takes, the move knight g4 at first looks very scary. Yeah, of course white can play something like bishop d4, something easy, but in fact white can also take g7 and just win the game. I say just win the game, but it's pretty crazy. Yeah? This is a really funny line. Yeah, with the king going up to c3, but believe me, at the end of this, white has a winning attack. Yeah, it's a pretty weird line and probably unnecessary to learn, but I thought it was quite funny. Here white's attack, as I said, is irresistible. The main move by far is of course here castles. White castles as well, and now we have an enormous enormous piling of the ways. Black can play like every move, that makes even remotely some sense. And it's difficult to learn all this on a move-by-move base. The best way to do it is to select 2 or 3 games and sequences for each move and get a feel for what's going on. This is what I try to do. All in all, there are 8 moves that I have selected. It's quite a bit. So let's do this step by step. Maybe we start with the pawn moves to make some order here. b6 is what black can do. Here we just occupy the center with d4. Of course d3 is also possible, but d4 is very logical. We just play our pieces here in the center and then later on open with e4. This is a position from the game Hamdoutchi gegen de Waal. White was a little bit better. It's a very typical position out of the Catalan or these structures where white enjoys more space. b6 is not a very frequent move. Some others are far more popular. A pawn move, we start with those, that is fairly popular is the move a5, trying to nibble at this pawn chain. White goes d3, and now black again has a wide choice of moves. The white play is going to be somewhat similar in most cases. We can look at this move, knight bd7, go knight d2, rook e8, and to prevent e5, d3, d4 is quite useful here. a4, queen c2, and white has a slight edge. It's just more space. e4 is an additional plan that will probably happen in the near future. The move knight a6 is also possible, and this is a game between Jan Timman and Anish Giri, and it ended in a win for Timman. So Timman managed to beat his successor as the Dutch #1 in 2011, when Giri already had a 2700 rating. Yeah, so we have bishop c3, takes, and white expands with b4. This is a typical maneuver, the bishop to c3 and then b4 to expand. Yeah, here in this game, Timman got excellent play on the queen side, and as I mentioned, went on to win against a very strong Anish Giri. In fact, this position is also something that had featured in one of my games, and there the move b5 was played. That was played by international master Mark van der Werf in the Dutch League 2011. I played knight bd2 and he went queen to b6. I'm actually pretty skeptical about this approach for black, because I think he mostly weakens his position by putting the pawns forward. Knight c6, I went knight e5. This is a good idea. White basically has a superfluous knight. We want to trade one and then replace the f3 knight with the d2 knight to control those squares. Yeah, white is a little bit better here, and surprisingly, just a couple of moves later, I can fast forward here a little bit, I was winning already with knight to d7, a very unusual motif. The idea was to just take on f8, play queen h6. Black actually got checkmated, I think 9 or 10 moves later in this game. So you can win with mating attacks out of this opening as well. Okay, any other pawn moves on move 7? We are looking for pawn moves to start off our overview. Yes, there is a pawn move, and this is the capture on c4. This is a pretty funny move in a way. I always thought that this is just a strategically very weird decision. Why would black capture and then play a c5? I got that in lots of blitz games and always was very happy. And I was very surprised to see this position feature in one of Magnus Carlsen games. He played this against Levon Aronian only a couple of months ago in 2016 in the Stavanger tournament. Yeah, white is just having a nice center now and play on the b file. d3, knight c6, knight e5 is a typical idea. White wants to open up that long diagonal by trading the knight on c6. In most games, black just took this knight, but after a structure, or in the structure like this, white is always better because his play on the b file, he has the better structure. Rook a4 is an idea that was played in a game Rajabov Gelfand. Even stronger is queen a4, when it will be difficult actually to cover this pawn. White is a lot better here. This is why the structure is a bit dubious. White has play on the queen side and black essentially has nothing at all. The move knight d4 is also possible and has been tried, but in a game Giri with white against Nagy, Giri also got a nice position. We can look at this a bit, and here now a nice regrouping. The knight went over to c3 to look at those weakened squares. White also has a slight advantage in this one. What did Carlsen actually play? He played the move knight to a5. And what is this piece doing there? Yeah, Aronian got the better game. He played queen to c1 and later supported the knight on e5 with the move f4. Yeah, white was better, and this maneuver here actually led to the destruction of black's pawn structure, and after knight b3 he had a hard time to keep those pawns on the board at all. Aronian won a very convincing game against the world champion here. Yeah, Carlsen somehow stumbled into this opening, I think, not being totally aware how bad this idea is. So these are the pawn moves, and of course that's not the end of the story. Black can play many piece moves. Knight bd7, for example, is a move trying to control e5 and potentially play e5. White can play the simple move. I mean, we want to start with queen c2, rook e8, can play the simple move d4 here, just occupy the center, and I think white has a slight advantage. This is probably technically transposing to a Fianchetto-Grünfeld, but it's a pretty nice version with the bishop back on c8. An additional idea is the move knight c3, which was recommended by Michael Marin in his books. I think this is also interesting and probably good for a slight edge, especially if black plays e5. There we take and play d3 for a slight advantage for white. Yeah, we know the structure. c6 is a little bit off, the knight on d7 is a little bit off, while white has a normal kind of setup in this reversed dragon star position. C takes d5, by the way, is completely bad due to knight b5. This is one trick with queen c2, knight c3. This is a pretty awful threat that cannot be really fought successfully. In the position after knight c3, black's best bet is actually to take it. Yeah, white will recapture and then e5. This I think is pretty decent for black and maybe points towards white playing d4 earlier. I think here black is quite okay. I mean, still it's a position that white can play, but I think I wouldn't mind to be black here. You have a choice. You can do this or the earlier d4 suggestion. In both cases, I think it looks quite okay. So that was knight bd7. Rook e8. Yeah, why not? Queen c2, and now knight bd7 would transpose, but there are also piece moves here. Bishop f5, for example, d3, knight d7, and now all of a sudden knight d4. Black did not pay any attention to that and now has a somewhat endangered bishop. White might play e4 and trap it. So e5 was played, and now after the capture and knight d2, the white position was absolutely great, with the bishop coming here looking at this terminally weak pawn. This bishop being stranded on f5 is a pretty common motif in this line when black makes a mistake by not looking at the retreat squares. I also had this position once, and knight a6 was the choice of my opponent. In this game, international master Job Delemar, also from the Netherlands. Yeah, knight a6, I replied with a3. I didn't want to deal with any knight b4, and he went knight h5, looking for a trade. Okay, and now I got something in the center and just developed actively. This is the position after move 16, and white was more comfortable. During the game I was thinking I already have a large advantage, but if you check it with the engine, they defend so well. Yeah, white is better because of these pretty funky knights, but it is not a huge advantage. I won at the end, but this was not directly related to the opening result. The setups. Let's see that I don't forget one. It's really crazy how many moves there are. Yeah, bishop f5 maybe. Yeah, why not? Just develop the bishop. We go d3, and now knight bd7 again. We know the idea. After knight d4 is quite dubious, so black often goes with queen c8. For bishop h3, we keep this on the board and develop like this. Here white is better. Why? Yeah, we have more options with the pawns. Black is basically in a sit and wait situation, while white can push e4, e5, he can push b4. There are just plans available for white, and black is mostly just staying in a way and tries to fend off what white may throw at him. I'm not saying black is in a terrible situation, he isn't. It's just that white has more ideas here. The most frequent move is bishop to g4. Did I cover all the moves? I think I did. It's just a lot. Yeah, bishop g4. It's pretty natural. We go d3 and now knight bd7. In some cases, black actually just takes here and gives up the bishop pair voluntarily. This can lead to pretty solid play for black if he chooses an e6 based setup, like this, for example, e6 and knight bd7, just some normal moves on the board. And d4. White is a little bit better. Two bishops is a good long-term asset, but still black is solid. Yeah, he put almost all pawns on light squares. This is a dark squared bishop and he has a pretty good block in the center. Yeah, white was a bit better here. It was Dinciarashvili actually had the white pieces here against the Polish GM Schmidt. Yeah, bishop f3, not something to be afraid of, but it's an option for black. They go knight bd7 more often than not, and now knight bd2 and rook e8. This is a good idea. Black prepares this e5 push. I think it's time for us now to grab the pair of bishops with h3. Black grabs and now plays e5. A very, very logical setup certainly for black. Yeah, I think that white now should take on d5. Knight d5 is something that we know already as a little bit better for white. We know the story. Two bishops, flexible center, c against d pawn traded. We can go to c4 and play on the queen side. Also cx c5 is the far more logical move certainly in comparison. Yeah, now rook c1 is an option, but my main move here is knight d2 that I recommend. Open up the diagonal and possibly use the knight on the queen side. Yeah, we follow a game between Etienne Bacrot and Eltar Safali. Yeah, queen a5, a3, queen to b6, b4, a5, oops, a5, and queen b3. A fairly typical kind of position, as I mentioned. I think white is a bit better here with the pair of bishops and the better flexibility, but of course black, yeah, didn't do much wrong there and is not in terrible shape. All in all, the g6 setups have this have a somewhat undefined character, as black can play many moves. He is very solid, but I think in most of the positions white has a slight pull due to more flexible pawn structure or the bishop pair. Like in this case, we are happy to have the